Just look at how scared of me Lawrence Krauss is. In one email, he's talking about some letter he wrote to try to defend himself from the BuzzFeed article. I couldn't find it, but I did find this evidence that he spent a lot of time working out exactly how vaguely he could describe me when trying to castigate me as ringleader of the movement to impugn leading male atheists, because Rebecca and her crowd are very, very vicious, and I don't want to start too much of a fire there. Yeah, you know what? You were fucking right to be scared of me, you disgusting, pathetic sex pest. I hope you never again do a lecture where at least one person in the crowd doesn't ask you exactly what you did on Jeffrey Epstein's island. And I hope that Ron Lindsay really enjoys having a little cameo in this latest release, really cementing his legacy as a man who enthusiastically helped run interference for a man who openly and gleefully harassed and abused dozens of women over the course of decades, and who kept company with the absolute worst pedophile in human history. All so that Ron could keep his boys' club running without the pesky interference of women like me saying, hey, maybe you could stop talking long enough to listen to what we're saying. Hope it was worth it.
Hey friends, you just heard the last few minutes of Rebecca Watson's amazingly thorough demolition of the entirety of the skeptic and atheist sphere for the last decade or so. It's very humbling for me, because I've been involved in this particular movement since at least 2005. I was at all of the conferences she mentioned. I was there for all of those events. I remember them well and with considerable dismay. So I'm sitting here right now, and guess what I'm reading? Yeah. We were good buddies for a short period of time, me and Richard Dawkins. This is my signed copy of The God Delusion. And I feel a bit ashamed right now that it's on my bookshelf. It won't be there much longer. It's got to go. So anyway, in that last little angry rant from Rebecca, a deservedly angry rant, I will say, she is chewing out Ron Lindsay. He is tearing into Lawrence Krauss, who was just threaded through all of this. Krauss, who had been corresponding with Brockman and Epstein. A lot of this stuff has been doubly verified in the Epstein files, but much of it came from documents that I was exposed to 10 years ago or more. And it's very distressing. Yeah, I feel like I've been hitching my star to a wagon that was just falling apart and exploding and disintegrating throughout all of this time, and that many of the players in this horrific event should be deeply ashamed. I mean, whenever I learned of these things, I was opposed to it, but not enough. I'm feeling really like, what have I been doing with my life for the last decade or two? Because this was horrific. It was terrible. That the people we appointed, or who appointed themselves as leaders and figureheads for our movement in atheism and skepticism, turned out to have not just feet of clay, but the clay was stretching all the way up into their armpits. They were so bad. These were horrible people who made excuses for the excesses that were going on. And for much of it, I would initially go along with it. And it was only as more information was disclosed that I felt that I had to distance myself from it all. So I'm feeling a little bit of guilt here. Never good enough. So you should go watch Rebecca Watson's latest video. What is it called? Epstein files reveal how pathetic Richard Dawkins and other men are. And yes, we all were. We all failed. Some of us worse than others. I mean, I came dragging up the rear of the whole thing, but at least I wasn't writing to Epstein to tattle on these nasty women in our movement like Richard Dawkins and Lawrence Krauss and Michael Shermer and all these people were doing. These ghastly, regressive monsters who were exploiting the women working in our movement for their own personal gain and satisfaction. And then whenever their behaviors were exposed, making excuses and saying, no, that they didn't do that. They did do that. They all deserve to have their names dragged through the mud, including this guy. No, it's so awful that I feel like even in my science classes, I am not going to mention Richard Dawkins ever again. He's pure poison. I agreed with a lot of the book here, but what we're discovering now is that the leaders of atheism were just as dogmatic and backwards and awful as the worst of the dogmatic religions that we were criticizing. That, you know, I don't quite know how to express it, but I feel kind of betrayed and lost. And I've known these things for a long, long time. But Rebecca just did a marvelous job of packing them all into one explosive video that reveals all the horrors that were going on behind the scenes. You know, one of the things that drove me out of the whole atheist movement was years ago when we were discussing feminism and things like that, and we were discussing that with these people, and me and some other people actually got dragged aside behind the scenes in one of the conferences and were told that we can't do this, that we have to shut up. We were accused of being the Stasi of the atheist movement. Rebecca didn't mention that letter, but there was a letter where this was Paula Kirby who really tore into us. And then afterwards we discover Paula Kirby was a former mistress of Richard Dawkins. And we discovered that a whole bunch of the people who were being appointed to run various elements of the atheist movement, who we thought, hey, this is great. We're getting all these women to do this work and becoming the faces behind atheism. And we learned that many of them were simply former mistresses of Richard Dawkins. I'm not policing anybody's sex life, but then to discover that the feminist front was all a charade, that what was being done here was manipulation of the women who were participating in our movement and the men as well. Some of us feminist men were initially quite pleased to see all these changes going on, but it was all a game they were playing. And now to discover that all of these people, these prominent heads of the atheist and skeptic movements, were busy being puppets to Jeffrey fucking Epstein. Okay, I just want to apologize to all the people who I misled because I thought this was a good cause, and it wasn't. Yeah, I do not know what to say, because, like I said, I had learned many of these things gradually over the years, but it's just the impact of getting it all at once in one magisterial video by Rebecca Watson. It had a lot of impact, and it's going to change things. It should change things. My worst nightmare would be that it doesn't change things. Okay. I'm going to stop right now before I start crying, because that's how I feel about all of this stuff that's been going on for decades now by wretched, rotten people who've been manipulating us. Goodbye.